Last night's Oscars was an embarrassment. And it was not an embarrassment because of the movies. I want to make sure I put that out there right away. Look, I liked some of these movies. I respect all of these movies. I'm glad that they released some movies. But the reality is, when we go back and think about 2020, it is not going to be remembered because of the movies. And the fact that ABC and the Academy felt the need to spend millions, guys, millions on that show. I know it looked low rent and like they spent $5 and shot it on a bunch of iPhones. We'll talk about the quality of the ceremony itself in a little bit. Guys, they spent a fortune on that show. The production budget on that show to shut down Union Station, to get everybody there, to get all those rapid tests that they needed to have, I'm sure, for everybody and their assistant to be in the room to be able to shoot like that without masks. Dude, there was so many costs that ballooned to make that show just, to me, offensive that they put all that money into that. There was no need. There was no need for that ceremony. That ceremony could have been a press release, and they could have donated that money to a more worthy cause to celebrate films. That's why it was an embarrassment to me, guys. I asked several producer friends of mine to help give me their unsolicited thoughts, their real advice, because I don't know the number, but all of them agreed that the production budget on that show is at the same of a Hollywood movie. Anywhere between 25 to potentially 40 to 50 million dollars. Now, maybe 10 on a low end, some of them said. So you're talking 10 to 50 million dollars that they spent to make that show that looked like that. Facts. And they spent it on that show. They spent it on that show. On a year where theaters are being crushed and collapsed. Theater workers are losing their jobs to celebrate the movies. No, Hollywood thought better to spend all that money to pat each other on the back for an award that no one needs in a year where it's not even a fair fight. How on earth is it fair to have an Oscars this year when there weren't even the amount of movies that typically are? This was such an asterisk year, if there ever was one. I don't understand why they thought this would be, oh, yeah, it's great. Let's continue. A lot of people, well, you got to keep moving, Andy. You got to keep living on. You know, we got to live like it's, like there's nothing wrong. Sure. And they put a lot of people to work. Okay, I'm trying to think of some positives that one could argue about the show. But I'm sorry, none of it still seems as worth as the amount of money wasted on that instead of something that actually could be really helpful for the movie industry. So I talked about this with some friends, some people, and I talked to a producer friend of mine who has worked for the Academy, and I to try and get the information of like, well, why did they do it? Like, what is the deal with the Oscars, and why is the Oscars still even happening given its ratings decline, et cetera? Well, I can fill you in a little bit. I got a little bit more intel. I knew some of this, but this was confirmed further. So the reality and the reason for the Oscars is to fund what is called the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences, or whatever they call it. The Academy is more than just the Oscars. The Oscars is their big shiny thing that they get ad revenue and production budget from ABC, which then ABC sells millions of dollars worth of ads on, to then pay the Oscars to put on this show and then pocket the rest of the money to be able to fund the rest of what the Academy does. Now, what the Academy does is all this stuff. A lot of libraries and museums, they're building a museum. They have the Margaret Herrick Library is a fantastic resource in LA. And the film archive, they archive movies. The Academy, from what I'm told from my friend who has worked there, the Academy does do a lot of good for movies. So you got to keep that in mind when you bash the Oscars and, well, why do we do it? So that's the first pause I will give here of, okay, I respect that. And the reality is they need the Oscars to be on air to get the money from ABC, because they signed a huge deal with ABC to have the next several, I don't know when it expires, but several years to air the Oscars. And so the Oscars, when they signed with ABC, before the last few years, had been event television, a Super Bowl, if you will, the movies. Everyone tuned in. I've never missed an Oscars. I almost skipped this year, but I didn't. And I always still watch it in the background because I'm a movie lover and I just want to know what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. But the Oscars has been event television for so many people. The glitz, the glamour, it's something that people look forward to. And I would argue there have been many years that were worthy, and it was a fun show and a good thing that we had. And past few years, the ratings have declined more and more and more and more. And a lot of people complain, oh, it's because they've gone woke. Oh, it's all da-da-da. Look, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with the wokeness, but what I will criticize, and Bill Maher went viral a couple weeks ago because he said this, and I didn't fully support everything he said because I don't think he actually watched any of the movies. I will echo though part of what he said of like I do miss the escapism of movies, and a year when we couldn't have it. The last thing I wanted to do is celebrate a bunch of serious movies, which they all are. They're all serious movies. And there are a bunch of movies that, let's be honest, none of you, the majority of you, let's correct, the majority of you haven't seen. I know film lovers who have still yet to watch all 8 of the, including myself, who've still yet to watch all 8 of the nominated movies. And they're the types of movies, let's be honest, they're the types of movies that you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to watch that. But then you're like, should I watch Solar Opposites instead? Or should I put on this instead? It's the types of shows that you don't just run to watch. And the movies rather. And, that's the reality. Like last year, like Parasite, it's an exciting thriller and it's like, the Joker was nominated. They just had just different kinds of movies to make you feel like, all right, well, at least it's all across the board. And this year really did feel like the scraps of the artsy films, the good artsy films that sort of trucked through and got through. And thank God for them. I'm not here to disrespect them. I love No Man's Land, to be honest. I think Chloe Zhao is an amazing director. I look forward to what she does. I can't wait to see Eternals now. She's gotten me excited because I can just tell she's someone to watch out for. She's a visionary. She's a good director. She's creative. You can just tell there's something special about her, and just already you can just tell. And we'll see if that continues to be the truth. But I'm optimistically, curious. And so they were good this year, no doubt. But at the end of the day, like, there's just not enough interest anymore. And this is a year where I feel like they should have figured out something more creative to do with the amount of funds. And I'm talking to both ABC and the Academy, because ABC, you're funding the Academy, you made a deal. Why not invest let's say the $25 million you spent on this show? Why not figure out some sort of quicker, easier, hour-long thing that you could have still sold, had a few people come in and Zoom, save that money, and instead teamed up with the Academy ABC to buy the Cinerama Dome, or help put an investment down to get theaters back on track, or to create a fund for the cinema workers who are struggling right now, to ensure that the art and the world of the cinema and the movie theaters could still live. It's like, there's so much. Think outside the box and do something more important. And figure out a way to make that ABC a write-off. Whatever you got to do. There has to have been something else you could have done to simplify the ceremony. Say, we're going to continue. Here are the awards. Go for it, etc. And do something more worthwhile with that money. Don't you guys think? Watching the show last night, I was just sort of just like, why? The whole time. And they tried their best. They decided to not hire a host. Clearly, now I'm realizing that was probably to save money, because even though they spent a fortune on this show, it's clear they saved a lot of the budget to try and do some other stuff and blame the pandemic to sort of justify it to ABC, because they got to deal with ABC in order for ABC to sell their advertising. It's got to be a worthy show. So they brought in Steven Soderbergh to produce it, and they did this whole opening big long tracking shot here with Regina King walking down to titles. She walks into Grand Central Station, which they outfitted. Guys, setting up these TVs alone and getting them all to be cabled and everything. It's like, guys, this costs money. This costs money to set all this up. The lighting above the thing, the camera crews. This is not even though it seemed lower rent, etc., this is not a cheap thing to do. Teleprompters, people in rooms across, keeping everybody socially distant while keeping the control rooms going on. There are so many layers to a show like this that requires a fortune to get it to be able to run and then broadcast live. You got to keep that in mind too. You have to broadcast this show live. You can't just come in, tape it, and then edit it and post and send it to the stations. No, you're broadcasting this live across the globe. So I don't get it. I don't think this was the year to do it. And in watching the show, it was a terribly produced show, I got to be honest. It was so boring and so overly long in a year where nobody cares about these movies. And I know they want to respect and give all the crew their due, but this was not the year to do that. This was an asterisk year. Be grateful you guys won an Oscar and got nominated for an Oscar and you're on the list, because you didn't have the competition this year. Let's be real. Come on. There's hardly as many movies to be out. So of course, the people you're nominated, yes, it's still an honor. Good for you, but come on. You know what I mean? Like, this doesn't seem like it's fair to be put in the same league as the other years where we have all these other movies to. And I guess one could argue earlier when Oscars came out, it was even less competition. And then as the past 20 years or so, more and more movies each year sort of make it harder and harder to win. Now it's maybe a little bit more of a throwback to earlier years, if you really look at it in one way. But overall, like, this was just a bad show. And it was. And it's not about being woke. It's about being preachy. Like, I want to escape the movies, even if it's to depress me and to learn a lesson. I don't need Hollywood and the actors to keep reminding me and telling me that I'm a terrible person and that the world sucks, that we need to do better. The movies already do it. We don't need the actors to reinforce what the movie already told me. Show, don't tell. You know what I mean? And all the show was, even Regina King, like, I'm not, everyone says don't be preachy, but I can't resist. It's too important. Well, then we're gonna start tuning out because it's all we hear everywhere. We're aware, we know, and this is the one place where it's to celebrate and have escapism. And the full show was just more and more preachy. It's a whole humanitarian thing with Tyler Perry telling me about how bad the homeless are. I agree, it's a problem, and good for you. But do we need to devote a whole chunk of the show talking about that instead of, why not show a clip about Sonic the Hedgehog? This is a show about movies. I don't want to hear about the sad dilemma of the homelessness in LA, even though, let's talk about it. The reason they did that is because the Oscars pushed out all the homeless people to clear up Union Station so they could do this show. I mean, the hypocrisy of Hollywood to then, we have to talk about this. And then they, in fact, were the people who did it. It just only adds to how much of an embarrassment this show was. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that they even had it this year. You didn't need it. Nothing was worth. And for those who watched, like, congrats to all these nominations. I was glad this Anthony Hopkins thing surprised me. I'm not going to lie. I even tweeted about it. I don't understand how Chadwick Boseman didn't win. Yes, Anthony Hopkins gives a great performance in The Father. Everyone's echoing, reminding me of that. I understand it's a good performance. At the same time, so was Chadwick Boseman. It's like, so was Riz Ahmed, what's his name, from Sound of Metal. There were a bunch of good performances. Stephen Yeun, and he would probably fall down. He was a great performance. It was an honor to be nominated for Stephen. But I would say those three are the ones that are clearly the most obvious to try and win. And when you got it that tight of a race, yeah, you think about legacy. And you think about the fact that Chadwick Boseman can't win again. And you do his body of work, which was fantastic. And what a way to honor him and cement his legacy, which, let's be honest, Anthony Hopkins already has. He's not only won, but he's going to be a legend because of his work, because he's already been celebrated so many times and had a long career. Chadwick Boseman won't have that same opportunity. So yeah, I do think because the Oscars has done it so often, it was a shock and a ridiculousness to me to not, if we're going to split hairs, okay, well then give it to the guy who can never win again, who gave us fantastic performance at such a young age. Let's make sure we honor him and remember him, and just do it because it's the 2020 year. Anthony Hopkins doesn't need it. We love Anthony Hopkins. We'll love Chadwick Boseman too, but Anthony Hopkins is already Academy Award-winning Sir Anthony Hopkins. And no one's watched The Father. Give me a break. I don't believe it. The bulk of the people have not seen The Father. I mean, they haven't seen any of these films, let's be honest. And then Nomadland, swoop, Best Actress, Best Picture, Best Director. Everyone's talking about Chloe Zhao getting Best Director, being the first MCU director to win, but she's the first person of color to win the Best Director, which is that's a big deal. It's the fact that no other director, female, only one other female has won. There it was. Only one other female has won, but no person of color has ever, female of color has ever won. That is crazy to me. And so that's great, well earned, and I'm excited for her. I think really well directed, visionary, amazing. And so yeah, Daniel Kaluuya won the main four. I'm just trying to so you guys were updated. Anthony Hopkins, Frances McDormand, and I don't remember her name. I don't know how to say it, but she was the grandmother from Minari, who she's the best part. Fantastic in that film. Her speech was the best. I love the moment where Brad Pitt's like socially distanced and not allowed, but she's clearly like, please give it to me, Brad. I'm all good. come hold my hand. I'm elderly. I'm having trouble getting the stairs. Please hold my hand, Brad. I really want to hold your hands because you're Brad Pitt. And that was her speech, and that whole moment was the best part of the show. Those are when the moments are fun, when you get that sort of happiness and levity and just escapism of like, wow, look, she did it. That's what it's supposed to be. And instead it felt like a lot of lists of people just boring speeches and preaching speeches and everything else about how serious the year was. We know. We lived it. Let's talk about the movies. Invisible Woman, great movie. Why was even Sonic surprising us? There were movies to celebrate. I know it seems silly, but there were movies they could have celebrated this year and talked about, and really shown all film. And the Oscars no longer do it. On top of that, not the year to do it. I'm curious, what do you guys think overall? Tell me your thoughts. Make sure you've hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, the bell for all alerts, and then you can also smash the like button if you're not. Do it right now. And tell me down below, what do you think? Did you watch? Do you never watch? Were you disappointed? Do you think I'm being crazy? Or do you think this was a year they could have done something else for the sake of film than pat each other on the back and give out more gold statues? I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, you could argue about that any year, obviously, but this year specifically, when theater industry is dying, it felt tone deaf. So I want to know what you think. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for more movie pop culture coverage here on Popcorn Planet.